And get this road on the show here. So I call the meeting to order. Oh, who's got to hit this got it thing? Pops up in the middle. Okay, I am required to read electronic meeting script since we're virtual. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, this library board of trustees needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. First, because each member of the library board of trustees is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'll conduct a roll call and ask each library board member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we'll vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I'm using the thing from online here. All right, I am Brian Engler. I am the Braddock District Trustee and speaking from home. Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne Levy, representing the city of Fairfax, and I'm speaking from my home in Fairfax.
Sujatha?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sujatha Hampton. I'm speaking from my home in Great Falls, Virginia.
And Parker. See him, it's Parker.
Good evening, Parker Brugge from representing the Hunter Mill District, speaking to you from my home in Vienna.
All right. Keith?
Yes, good evening.
Yes.
Keith Box, representing the Franconia District from my home in Springfield.
Fran?
Fran Milhauser, representing the Mason District, speaking from my home in Falls Church.
Gary?
Gary Russell, representing Mount Vernon from my home in Mount Vernon.
Okay, Sue is not here yet. Is that correct? No. Okay.
Still did
Bill?
join you.
Yep, Phil?
Bill Rosenthal, Springfield District from my home in Fairfax Station.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to turn a page here, and of course I can't do it. I have too many papers on too small a desk. Liz?
Hi, Liz Walker, representing the Sully District, calling in from my home in Centerville.
And Priscilla?
Good evening, Priscilla Dando at home at Woodbridge, representing Fairfax County Public Schools.
Okay, so Sue and Kripa currently are not here. All right. Okay, now, at this point, I'll pass the virtual gavel to the vice chair so I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move, oh, here you go, Suzanne, you got it. Good, thanks. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this library board of trustees. You run the motion, Suzanne. Unmute. Unmute there.
Does everyone hear everyone else?
Yes.
Yes, aye. Okay.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay,
everyone hears. I turn it back over to Brian.
No, you stay here. Okay, because I have to make a second motion.
Okay,
The second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we're meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this board in the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically this month. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated Zoom meeting, and that the public may access this meeting by joining from a PC, Mac, Linux, iOS, or Android at the given link.
do I
So
have
we
a
need a-
second?
I second, Phil.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Okay.
Motion passes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Finally, it's next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself. are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
I second Phil.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye,
Okay. Now I take the gavel.
all yours.
There we go. Okay. All right, let me get rid of all my papers here. Okay, our meeting begins with a presentation. Do you want to take over, Jessica? Where are you?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a moment to get that up. And slideshow. So today I'm going to be presenting on some of the intellectual freedom and censorship legislative bills that have been both proposed, adopted, discussed, dismissed, vetoed, kind of across the board. As you know, one of Brian's goals as chair of this library board is to ensure that the Board of Trustees has a good understanding of what's going on both in Virginia and nationally around intellectual freedom efforts, both sustaining intellectual freedom and challenges to it. I want to do a big shout out to Diane Cohen, our Technical Operations Division Director, who did almost every ounce of the research on this. I am just the mouthpiece for it today. And she will certainly chime in if she has anything additional she'd like to share that I am not capturing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the trajectory of bills that we saw through this review, the research that we did, the bills that we've seen proposed and failed, those that are adopted or in process, administrative laws that we're seeing start to bubble up, and what's next. So we've spoken both in staff presentations to this board and in general about some of the trends that we're seeing in both public and school libraries related to collection challenges. You all have received an entire separate presentation, which was virtual, so you can always go back and watch it if you need a refresher, on FCPL's request for reconsideration process. Typically, in public libraries, if an individual person has a concern about a material that is held, its place in the collection, if someone thinks it should be a teen book or an adult book instead of in the children's section, or just generally whether it is a good item to have in our collection, that it meets some kind of service need and is useful for someone.
I'll send it to you. I'll text you.
Then you can do this request for reconsideration. And that has really met a need. It's transparent, it's open, it uses a staff party to assess materials. And if someone is unhappy with the decision that that staff committee comes up with, it then rises to the Library Board of Trustees. And what we're seeing now is state and proposed federal laws that take that power and autonomy away from individual schools and public library systems and are instead consolidating it at the state level mostly. There's one federal bill that's being reviewed, but it's mostly at the state level. So where are these bills? Well, actually, let's do the research first because, you know, we're librarians. We want to make sure that we're getting this from good information sources. So Diane did an incredible amount of assessment on this and tried to find a good balance of resources that highlight as much as possible an unbiased view of the laws that are being proposed. So research has been done through the National Conference of State Legislatures, PEN America, ACLU, Every Library's Book Ban Report, and Ballotopedia. So really all we assessed was the direct language in the bills that were either proposed or adopted. This is not our individual spin on it. It's not how any one particular individual feels about it. It's just what do the laws say that are being proposed or adopted, and how does that affect libraries? I am positive that our research left out a few things, but we did a pretty deep dive on this, and hopefully this gives a solid, comprehensive overview of the span of what's being done nationally. So in 2022 alone, 25 states had legislative items proposed on the topic of either intellectual freedom, censorship, parental bill of rights, any of those kind of broad umbrella topics. That's half of the states in our nation. That is a lot of action and activity around this topic. And it is clear when you are assessing the language in these proposed bills that many people are using the same template to try and push it forward. So the language in some appears to be almost a copy and paste over from one state to another. The states that have failed bills are all over the place. They're in conservative states with Republican governors. They're in more progressive states with Democratic governors. It's really all over. And as you can see from the list here, it's on all the different regions of our country as well. It's Midwest, it's West, it's Northeast, it's our state as well. And what we found was that many of the bills that failed, some were due to simply timing out a legislative session, but many were withdrawn, reworked, and resubmitted, as we see with other legislative items where they are condensed down as many different legislators submit bills, they talk about it, and then they assess and come back with a more comprehensive bill that they think fits their needs a little bit better. Almost all of these 25 bills that were in this proposed and failed section were mostly focused on school libraries. They were less about public libraries, and they were oftentimes focused more on that parental bill of rights and the opportunities for parents to have a stronger hand or touch point in their children's education. But we thought it was really appropriate to share that those were happening as well. As you'll see later, some of these bills have strong impacts on public libraries too. There was only one bill that was vetoed, and that was in Kansas. She had a fascinating opinion that went along with it that I'll be happy to share and post later for your reading pleasure about why she vetoed the bill. And it was mostly about overreach. So those are the bills that were proposed and failed. We also saw 14 states that either had active or adopted laws that were either being discussed in 2022 or were put into place in 2022. For those bills that had enacted laws in 2022, again, most of the focus was for our colleagues in school libraries or for teachers in schools in general. So there's a couple bullets down below that you can see, and a lot of the focus was on the definition of what a sexually explicit material is, redefining what age appropriateness is for materials. Many of them included language speaking to parental opportunities to pre-approve of materials that minors could either access, check out, or be viewed by their children. There was even one law in Oklahoma that passed that required vendors who provide database services to follow those same legislative requirements. It's not just on parents and families, it's not just on staff in their public or school library system, it's also on vendors to ensure that they are following those exact same very explicit requirements. So you're probably saying, Jessica, this is all about school libraries mostly. Why do we care? We're a public library board. And the reason that this was brought to your board leadership's attention to start talking about was the segue. It's that transition point, because our school library colleagues have gotten a lot of the brunt of these bills that are coming forward, whether you are happy with their impact or not. But we can kind of see the trajectory on this, which is a transition to public libraries as well. Missouri was not able to pass a complete parental bill of rights bill that they had put forward as legislative amendment in 2022. So instead, they are changing their trajectory, and they are looking at whether or not they can push forward an administrative law change, which is currently open for public comment, I believe, through mid-December. I think you also have to be a resident of the state of Missouri to comment on it, but I could be wrong about that. This administrative law change is being proposed by their Secretary of State, and it's related to state funding. So any school, public, or special library that receives funding from the state can be cut off from that funding if this administrative law changes for a variety of reasons. But I included the three below that I think you'll find really pertinent public library services. So if a public library is found to have age inappropriate material displayed in a space where minors might congregate or walk past, you could be ineligible for state funds. If you have an event or presentation at the library without age-appropriate designation on your website, in your facility, or on the site of that program, you could be ineligible for state funding. And minors will have to have a parent or guardian determine what they are eligible to read, assess, or view in a public library if this bill passes in Missouri, if you want to be eligible for state aid. So that is why we wanted to share this information with you. While most of the laws that we're seeing in 2022 are focused on school libraries, this administrative law suggestion is one that shows how easy it is to slide from just school libraries in that conversation to public libraries as well. And while our public library system, if we had to, would find a way to get around the need for our state aid, many of our colleagues in the rest of the Commonwealth would not be so fortunate. They are not funded as well by their localities, and they would need to find a way to comply with these types of rules if they are proceeded forward with in a state like ours. We receive approximately $600,000 in state aid from the Library of Virginia every year. So that's no small amount, and it goes greatly into our collection development budget. So this is the trajectory that staff are seeing the bills and laws in 2022 moving forward with. We will, of course, keep you all apprised as we transition into 2023. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that folks have. I see that Liz has her hand up. Liz is also muted.
Oh, Liz, you're muted, Liz.
All right. Did they define age appropriate? What it is? Because, you know, I could, as a child, I could go into the library and look on the shelf, and how can they possibly have be able to monitor who's looking at what material off the shelves? I can see maybe on a checkout, but they don't even have pictures of individuals and what they're allowed or allowed. I mean, it just could be a crazy mess if
that is accurate. So one of the, after that Missouri administrative law was proposed, most of the public library directors in Missouri got together for a phone call just to talk about how they would effectuate something like that. It would cost them millions of dollars every year to even effectuate something like that if they had to do it, which is that even worth the state aid that they're receiving at that point. For us, the wonderful thing about libraries is, particularly public libraries, is that it's a space for families to discuss what they want to read and bring into their household and have an opportunity to learn from. And age appropriateness is absolutely an individual family-based decision. When it comes to the public library, we're not here to put labels on that. That's something that a family should decide together. And it's why public libraries don't act in loco parentis the same way that schools do. So yes, that would be a very, very, very hard job to do.
impossible, truly impossible to do, to monitor what children are picking up off the shelf, not even knowing who they were, who they are, what age, you know. It's just crazy thinking here.
It's fascinating to watch the progression from like a 20,000 foot level, because otherwise it just makes you kind of sad. But it's really interesting to see when one thing is not working, what do we move to next? And because public libraries are an open space where people have opportunities to learn and engage, you know, our hope is always that people will take us up on that opportunity and come and find out together within their own family unit what makes the most sense. Sujatha.
Hi, is there any plan to share this specific presentation? It's very short, easy to digest with our Board of Supervisors, or is there a way for us to share this with our Board of Supervisors? As I said in our last FAM meeting, which I'm sure Fran will be discussing whenever it's time to discuss that, you know, I think we need to be putting in some safeguards to protect ourselves, because the slide is very quick. It's very insidious. We're like frogs in a pot. So sometimes things happen, they happen so slow, we're not prepared. So if we can put those protections in place right now, while we have an amenable state government, local government, and an amenable library board of trustees, it would be wise on our part to do so. So this information is extremely, it's easily digested, very easy to share. I recommend we make a plan to share with our own Board of Supervisors, even present to the Board of Supervisors as part of the remit that Fran's Fan Club also has of bringing, like having people, it doesn't have to be just us. I'm sure that when our fellows in our communities hear that these threats are really the wolf is at the door, honestly, quite honestly, the wolf is at the door, that they might also be willing to ask and demand that our local government protect us in ways that we can put in place right now in our bylaws, doing some things to just, delay just that, get to another election, get to another, what I mean, move us as close as we can.
So your point is very well taken. The county's legislative review process for their upcoming 2023 General Assembly session is underway. And I am on the docket for their November 22nd Legislative Committee meeting to talk about this board's recommendation to include some kind of language in there around intellectual freedom. That is, of course, a really broad statement. So I think it is probably more likely, without having been to that meeting and not knowing what their feedback is going to be, it's probably more likely that they will take that under consideration and will instead, as bills come forward in 2023, use that as a starting point for discussions, that the library board is supportive of, intellectual freedom rights. But we do have time with them just right before Thanksgiving.
I think it would be really good if those of us who might already know our supervisors, have a relationship with them, even prep them in advance of your 22nd meeting, which today is November 9th.
9.
Have a couple of weeks before you meet with them. I would like to let John Faust know that you're going to be coming and you're going to be talking about it. And this is what sort of part of, because you may not have time to get into the weeds with, you may not even have time to share the full scope of what you just shared today.
Correct.
So if we have prepped them in advance, that then they can ask you pertinent questions that might allow you to give more information that was just shared.
Sounds good to me. Obviously, the PowerPoint is publicly accessible. Anyone can use it and share it. But this meeting is, of course, recorded as well. So we can always just tag the timeline of that presentation if you'd like to share that too.
I would like to have it excerpted out of the whole video recording.
Okay, I think we can do that.
But are you going through to the Board of Supervisors or a subcommittee?
So the Board of Supervisors acts as committees of the whole. So their whole Board of Supervisors Legislative Committee meets next on November 22nd.
Okay.
And I am on the agenda to talk about a more boiled down version of this topic.
Okay.
I think that's great. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Suzanne.
Have we had things put on the city's legislative agenda as well?
I have not done that. I would be happy to do that in the future if you would like to help me through the process there.
Okay, I'm going to be tied up at the book sale most of this week, so
next go round.
Maybe Monday I can check with folks in the city now that the election's over and things are should calm down. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay. Anyone else? No? All right. Well, thank you, Jessica. And definitely thanks, Diane, for
extra thanks to Diane. She did all the
that.
legwork on this.
Yeah, that's good. And I like the fact that you're going to speak to the legislative committee. So let's go on with the rest of the meeting. We now have the section on public comments. The library board wishes to provide an opportunity for the public to comment on library-related issues. It's our policy to hear a maximum of 10 speakers at any regularly scheduled board meeting. Speakers are limited to one public comment during a 6-month period. Each speaker is a maximum of 3 minutes for their comments. A 30-second warning will be given before each speaker's time is up, and the speaker will be expected to end promptly when time is called. Speakers are requested to pre-register with the library director. However, if there are available public comment slots open at the beginning of a board meeting, the remaining slots may be filled by individuals registering at the meeting. Board members will listen, but not question or respond to speakers. Tonight, there are no registered speakers. If anyone wishes to speak at a future meeting, please call the director's assistant at 703-324-8324. Okay, the next part is the Minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes that were printed and emailed to you? Okay. If there are none, there being no corrections to the minutes stand approved as printed. Next is the chair's report, and I really don't have a lot to say. I'll have things to say later, but perhaps the most pleased I was this month was to see the Fairfax County draft 2023 legislative program. On page 11, you'll see that they expanded what they have said about the library. I could read it, but it's online, so go ahead. But they took our basic sentence that has been in there for a while and added to it the reducing barriers to libraries acquiring e-materials. So thank you, Gary, and all others who worked on that. I think we have had an impact. Again, this is the draft legislative agenda, so hopefully it will stay in their final one. I think December is when they act on that. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Good. All right. Committee reports. Oh, me again. Strategic planning. Okay. All I'm going to say here is that look at the consideration of it. Come later. Finance Committee, Keith, have anything?
That was pretty quick transition to me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, in your board packet, you'll see we have some budget talking points. And I think Jessica and the library staff have laid it out pretty well. Our two requests, of course, with regard to the book budget and the behavioral health specialists, we laid it out with statistics to get some quick buy-in, and then laid out the impact. And I think I've given Jessica the thumbs up on this, but if anyone else has anything to add to be more impactful, I think we can still make edits here. But I think it's nice and concise. So if we can keep it concise, I think that this will be a useful item for us talking to our supervisors or others who may have an impact on this budget.
Okay. Any comments or questions? No? Okay. Fran? Oops, Fran the fan. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And also, I didn't get a chance to put my hand up about the strategic plan, but I just wanted to commend the committee on the work that you did, because it's a really beautiful document. It has a lot of really wonderful stuff in it. So kudos to you guys. Kudos to that, guys. And then the fan report, we met on November 1st to further refine the next steps of the committee. We decided to concentrate on the role of current library trustees as advocates and our responsibilities to become familiar with the range of library programs and services as communicated in the quarterly report from the outreach committee. Be prepared to communicate the role the library plays throughout the community in diverse settings, as well as in each library. So the sort of melding of the outreach, which is great for what programs we're offering, but then what other sort of joint programs do we have with other agencies, so that the library isn't just a silo, standalone organization, which I think sometimes people, it can be viewed as such a sacred cow. You mentioned, I'm a librarian. Oh, or, I work in the library. Oh, that must be wonderful. Oh, that you're doing such a good job. Well, that's nice, but there's a lot more to us than that, as we know. So once again, the role of ourselves, all of us trustees, then furthermore, to interact with local leadership individually as well as in group settings, to strengthen connections and address specific issues. And I think those of us who were at the Lorton opening, which was such an incredible event, had a wonderful opportunity to talk to the elected officials who were there, the county officials who were there. And, it was just, I wasn't ready with talking points, but I did kind of go up to people, especially Don Byer, because I was recently redistricted into his district. So, and I wanted to compliment him on his library quotes and things in his talk. It was really great. So that kind of event, if you go to it, it's what we need to be. We need to be there and do that. And then the last thing is to recruit advocates to write letters and communicate with decision makers in support of library priorities and needs. So I think from our earlier meeting, we had been a little more diffuse in what we were going to do, and we're kind of narrowing it down and focusing more. So we will be working with the budget framework that the Finance Committee has put out, to identify when library advocates should reach out in support of library funding. And we're working with library staff in the development of talking points, but I see we have some really great talking points from the Finance Committee as well. So it sort of summarized working on the A is for advocacy of library fans. We challenged ourselves as committee members to identify before our next meeting on November 30th, community members who will support the library. So we have that challenge to come back to our committee meeting with, I've asked at least one person that I know will be a library supporter. And so that's that. And then I wanted to share with you something for you to think about as a sort of the life cycle of board members in terms of advocacy, which, you have prospects. Before you were appointed, maybe you were thinking about it and you approached your supervisor, I think I'd like to do that. Or, so you're sort of prospect, not really sure what it is. Then as a new member and you're sort of, onboarding and learning the ropes, and then a seasoned pro. And I think almost all of us are seasoned pros now because we've all been around enough time to call that. And then former members, who are sort of emeritus. And so that's another pool of people to contact if you have a personal relationship with the person, perhaps who was a trustee before you were, or that you had a special relationship with serving on the board together, is another person to think about that. So that's about all for our committee. And if you have any questions or issues you want to bring up? All of
Anybody?
us are here. No,
No?
we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you very much. And thanks for your committee and the Finance Committee and of course, the Strategic Planning Committee. I've been doing that. Jessica,
Brian,
your director's report. Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry, Parker.
I was just going to add one thing to what Fran said. Sujatha and I, part of that committee, we just talked about how all of us have kind of varying degrees of comfort with talking to elected officials. And we thought by providing board members with a set of talking points, it would help with that. So the staff is putting together those talking points. I think Fran mentioned that, but I think all of us have the ability to advocate on behalf of the library, and armed with some talking points will be even more effective. So looking forward.
That's good. And those will be more general than the quarterly ones we get from outreach then.
Right.
That have
Right.
very specifically.
And in the committee, we talked about, the concept of the elevator talk. And I know my feeling was like, what I know when I've seen that, it's like, oh, I have to memorize this elevator talk. And we all agree that like having points that you can sort of pick and choose from, like this really resonates with me. This is something I'm really comfortable in advocating for, or I'll remember. If it's a list of, X number, I'll remember some of them when I'm face to face with someone I don't know, but I want to talk to. So, thank you for bringing that up, Parker.
Okay, yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to seeing it. Okay, that's it for committee reports. Now the director's report. Yes. I think.
Liz has a
Are
question.
you good?
Liz
Oh,
has-
Liz has.
Oh,
How
Liz
come
has a
these,
question.
I'm not getting, okay, I see it.
Sorry.
I don't know, I'm getting a delay on the little hand.
I just have a question with Fran, for Fran. Fran, have you guys in the committee discussed about maybe establishing an email distribution list for the Friends leadership? And saying that from time to time, we would like to communicate with them via email, raising their awareness of certain things that are going on, like, we're going to be presenting to the board meeting, if you could attend
Mhm.
in support of, whatever it is. Or these are some highlights of some programs that are going on that, have been funded by the some friends group or the foundation, or we could use some, uh, uh, another source of funds for it, or, just highlights. I mean, I think if we could, that is for advocacy, there's a group of people out there that really love their libraries and really can make fantastic advocates if we link up with them and provide them with talking points.
That's definitely on our horizon. Completely and totally, because I know I have the feeling of the importance of communicating that to friends groups in case they have members who have, if you will, aged out of the lifting books, moving books, doing the book sale, but still want to be engaged, and that this will be another avenue for them. So that is definitely on our horizon. We're sort of like taking step at a time and starting with the trustees and on that advocacy level, but you've definitely hit on something that we're completely committed to working on that. Yes.
Remind them, like Nextdoor and, different publications and social media, they can really be great advocates for us.
Absolutely. You're absolutely
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go very slow here. Give my computer a chance to pop up that little hand. No, I don't see any more hands. So go ahead, Jessica.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. So I had a couple of items in my director's report today. The first is a very quiet launch of circulating board games. So as you know, we have our Library of Things collection, our non-traditional items that we circulate, like the Connect kits, which are our laptops and MiFi units, our Conserve kits, which are those bags that have your home energy efficiency items in them. We have thermal cameras, nature backpacks, a variety of things. And we're really looking to expand those in ways that make sense. So a staff committee identified 3 new collections that we're going to start growing. And the first is board games that you can check out. They are only living and circulating at 3 locations: Centerville, George Mason, and Sherwood. And they are going to start heading out into public hands on November 14th, just around the corner. But because it's only at 3 locations, we didn't want to like shout it from the rooftops, because people only read half of the things that you post on social media. So they'll go, board games, that's great, I'm going to stop at my local library, and then be very sad when they don't see it at their local branch. So I wanted to share it with all of you, but in a very quiet way. So if you happen to be at Centerville, George Mason, or Sherwood anytime soon, those will be out starting next week. We don't have a great indication yet of how quickly they're going to move. So my apologies if you stop by and they are all gone already. But you can take a look at the board games that will be circulating. We have a page up now on our research guides under Library of Things, so you can see exactly which board games we are circulating to start with. And we're also happy to take suggestions for additions to that collection, as long as it won't take our circulation staff a half an hour to count every individual piece as that item is returned to us. If this one goes well, we're going to take best practices from this rollout. And our next collection, which is TBD, will be coming out in the spring. You'll also see that the second item on here is already done. So it was our Indie Author Day events, which happened last week, but I was hoping that you all would read your board packet over the weekend and see and go, ha, I should go visit some local authors. We had some exceptionally great programs happening in a bunch of branches this weekend. And just because Indie Author Day is done, doesn't mean that you need to stop supporting our wonderful local and independent authors. So please do check out some of the great books that are in our collection that those local folks have written and contributed to. And I also included one countywide item this time. As I think you all are aware, Fairfax County has lots of plans and goals and documents that we are continually cycling through and trying to use to improve quality of life for residents. And one of those that's happening right now is Shaping the Future of Aging. It's a survey and now a series of town halls that the county is hosting to get feedback on services for senior citizens and people who might need a little extra support aging in place. So some of those town halls have already happened. They began really late October, but they are running through this month. The survey is now closed, but I believe you can check out the results of it online as well. So if you are interested, please do take a look at the website that is linked in your virtual board packet to see if you could either attend a town hall session or just see how this is progressing. I will definitely keep you all apprised as it moves forward. And the last thing I wanted to conclude with was a thank you. I know at our last board meeting, Brian gave a really nice shout out for Rose Azuko, who passed away as our branch manager of the Access Services Library over a month ago now. Her service was last week, Saturday. And while I was not able to personally attend, we had many staff who were touched by Rose in their lives, and they attended. Her family is amazing, and they posted some wonderful pictures online of the service. And you know, everyone processes these things in their own time, but we're hoping that this is a good point in time for people to remember the great things that they loved about Rose and focus on the good that she brought into our lives. So just wanted to share that her service did happen, and her internment started last week as well. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for Jessica?
I have a follow-up question.
Oh, yes, Keith.
Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand there, but
Okay.
this is with Jessica. As I was reading the packet, I was trying to figure out our connection to this the aging town halls. Can you explain I guess our integration or how you imagine that?
Great question. We don't have an integration, but I would love for us to have one, which is why I wanted to share it. So this particular process with the surveys and the town halls is not one that the library has been a part of, but we really want to amplify the message. So often when we do reach out for community engagement, we get a lot of the same voices who are sharing their feedback, who are participating because either they can physically make it or they have a vested interest in it. So what all county agencies are trying to do is make our message broader to reach folks that maybe the county has not tapped before, so that as they are planning future services for senior citizens, it's hitting all the residents in our county, not just maybe the squeakiest wheels.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thanks. And I see Fran's
you.
hand up, although it's kind of faded.
Oh,
into
Fran,
the
yes.
back
Yeah,
there.
it was
I
a
see it
funny
now.
one. So very pale. Anyway, I wanted to mention that 3 library employees received county outstanding performance awards on Friday. I thought that I would attend, but then, okay, don't put this in the minutes, but then I remembered sitting on those benches at
Yes,
the
form
government
steps
center is
are-
so painful. But anyway,
They're firm.
Emily Riley, branch manager at George, and Peggy Bircher in collection development, tech operation, you know, whatever. And Suzanne
Margaret
and I worked
Wolfrey.
with Peggy for years. And then I apologize, I've forgotten the name of the woman from admin who was also recognized. And
Yeah,
I didn't
it was
want
a
to
great
save
event.
this to the roundtable. So I'm sort of piggybacking on the director's report because I know you'll
All
know
good.
the name. It was great.
All good. Yeah, so we had 3 employees who received outstanding performance awards. The one that you mentioned last is Margaret Wolfrey. She is our P card, our procurement card coordinator in our finance department. We also had 2 employees in our access services department who were part of a team award for a collaborative effort that they did. So we bought them all a cake afterwards, and everybody got their sugar on.
It was great. It was great.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you, Fran.
Congratulations.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? No? Okay, you can put your hand down, Fran.
Oh,
Kidding.
thank
kid.
you. Thank you, Dad.
I'm trying. Well, I'm
Maybe I
trying to-
can't. Maybe I can.
I'm trying to
I don't know.
figure out this virtual meeting thing. I've never actually run one of these.
There
Okay.
it is. There it is.
Now we're on to consideration item. A consideration item, as you recall, is something we put on the agenda we have a description up front, we have the item, and this time it is the strategic plan for the next 2023 through 2027 timeframe. We can't really discuss it tonight, or won't discuss it tonight. We will, this is the fruits of the strategic planning committee and the staff's strategic planning committee, chaired by Doug Miller. And I think it's pretty good. So please take a look at it. We will act on it next meeting, which is in December, and hopefully pass it for the next 5 years. So it's something we have to do every 5 years. It is a requirement. The description and background is in your packet there. At any rate, I think that it looks good, but if you have any questions or comments, please send them to us. You're welcome to send them ahead of the next meeting so that maybe we can get them on the agenda. But at the next meeting, we'll actually discuss this and hopefully vote on it and get it passed. So that's it. And it looks good. Yeah, it looks really good in color, but it looks good in black and white. Okay. That's it. Now we have an action item this month, which was consideration last month. And this is the new policy T regarding all virtual meetings. This, of course, is a virtual meeting that's under the emergency authorization, I guess. But we have to create a new policy T, or we've been asked to by the county, and we've been given the word, so it makes it kind of easy in a way. As part of the update for the FOIA legal code, which went into effect as of September 1st, 2022, a new policy T is required. As with the prior adoption of policy Q regarding remote participation in a live meeting, this language has been drafted and approved by the county attorney. It can't be modified. The recommended new policy is attached. It's in your packet. If you want to discuss it, we can, but we really can't change it. Are there any discussion?
I move that we approve it.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Do I have a second on that? Anyone? Second? Okay,
Second.
Suzanne, seconds. Fine, thank you. All right, is there any discussion on this? I think we just have to do it. Okay, there being no discussion, let's have a vote. All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
There you go, aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? No, opposed? No, no. Okay, great. So it is passed. Plunk. Thank you. On the action. Now we're going to get to round table. And the round table has been around for a long time. And we've never had any, what can I say? Have to use some kind of alliterative. But we've never been actually limited on what we can talk to about roundtable. It just has to be fairly brief. And it has been suggested by the fan committee and members thereof that we explicitly state now that you're welcome to give, say, a book recommendation. And it's just a short one, not a book report, as Fran says. But if you want to in your roundtable say, oh, I've been reading this and I think it's really good and useful and I recommend it, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, the roundtable is just roundtable like it always has been. So do we have anybody on the roundtable? Well, it's actually, I'll try to do it in order if I can. Suzanne, you happen to be at the top of my screen. Do you have anything for the roundtable? You're muted. You're muted. Okay.
Sorry, I was just looking up a book to mention,
Oh.
but I wasn't quick enough. Anyway,
That's okay.
I spent the afternoon setting up for the book sale in the Virginia Room. This week is Fairfax City Regional Friends and the Virginia Room Friends book sales. We have really tons and tons of genealogy books that came to us as a gift. And many, many, many were added to the collection. We were able to take some were duplicates of things we already have. So we were able to take them out. We really have probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10 tables and 5 carts full of genealogy books for sale.
Wow.
So we're hoping for a very successful sale.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to stop in, our hours are tomorrow, 10 to 4, Saturday 10 to 4, and Sunday 10 to 3. Sunday's our bag sale. On both floors, you can buy a bag of books for $8.
Okay.
So if
I
you
have
have
a question
nothing
on the
better to do this weekend, stop in
Yeah.
at Fairfax.
Okay, I have a question on the genealogy books. We've gotten a few donated at Burke Center that are explicit to families. Are these like that? Like the McClintock family
There are
history
some,
or something
yes,
like that? There are some?
And if you
Yeah.
get genealogy books donated to your branch, we'd appreciate it if you'd offer
Oh.
them to the Virginia room first.
Yeah, we usually do, but we don't get many, but I just wondered if these are generic, like how to do a
Mostly they're
genealogy or
county
something.
records. We have them for states all over the country from here to
Oh, okay.
California.
So more
As
than
well
just
as books
Virginia.
on Great Britain, Ireland, Germany.
Great.
I saw a book on Dutch genealogy. Just it's a
Yeah.
some gentleman died and he wanted his books to come to the library. And I think there
Excellent.
were something like 45 boxes of his books.
Oh my God. Okay, that sounds really
Hundreds
interesting.
have been added to the collection. So,
Great. Okay, thank you.
and if
Great.
you wait just half a second, let me get my title
Oh.
book, which I think is a really important book. It's called Take My Hand by Perkins Valdez. I don't know if Sujatha has read this book, but I think it's a really, really important book on, I think it's going to become a classic. I was just very moved by it. It's about a sister I read it like 4 months ago in, I think it was Alabama, who is sterilized. I think in the 1930s or 40s, and without permission, without any reason to do it. And it brings back, it's sort of parallel to what was going on with the Tuskegee study, but it was a study done on women. And the author was incredible, and I would recommend it. It's Nolan Perkins Valdez is the author.
Okay. Perkins Valdez.
Suzanne, you assume everyone knows what the Tuskegee experiment was.
I hope people do. That was where
We should, but
they were doing research on syphilis, and they did not treat Black men in the study. And they got sicker and sicker and sicker and died. It was a horrible time in American history that they did this sort of thing to people. And I don't know that any of them ever got any medicine for it. They just were tracing the progression of syphilis in these Black men, and didn't tell them what they were doing, of course. It was way before informed consent got into medical research.
Thanks for indulging me.
Okay. Did I
That's
do
very-
okay?
Yeah.
Very well.
It was at Tuskegee
Yeah.
University, not to be confused with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah, totally different. Okay, thank you. That's good. And I presume we have that in our collection.
We do.
Certainly should.
We do.
Okay, thank you. Gary, you're next on my magic screen here.
I just want to thank all of you who were able to get to the Lorton grand opening, as well as those that couldn't make it, who have subsequently stopped by to see it. I really appreciate that. You know, it was billed as a celebration, and it certainly was a celebration of what had been accomplished. But you know, the facility itself and its operation is providing some very nice lessons for the future.
Good. Thank you. Keith, you're next.
Yeah, this is a request to staff. Just going through I'm sorry to give you more work, Jessica, but I was looking at the circulation and the counts for the door counts and stuff like that. And every month we get like the monthly, and then we get the year to date. But I wonder if we can see like the trend. So maybe just one more graph to show what's happening. Is it a straight line? Is it peaking and going? Because I always find that part fascinating to see whether or not, you know, we need to promote the library more.
I would be happy to do that for you.
Okay, that's a great idea, Keith. Thank you. I was just thinking today about when I looked at the annual report from last year, that's one of the first things I look at and try to bring out to people is that sort of trend that's in there. But if we saw it monthly, then we could add to it and say, oh, by the way, it's still going up. Thank you.
And you get to see, I guess you get to see whether, you know, like we could do overlays ourselves anyway on what it is
Yeah.
that brought people in. Do they come in the holidays? Do they come in when we have particular shows? Like, what is it that makes people come in? You
Yeah.
know, we could make some assumptions, I suppose, if we had
Yeah.
it.
Good
that way.
idea.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay.
Great.
Parker, you're next on my screen anyway. Do you have anything?
Sure, I'll just mention that I had the pleasure of working as an elections officer yesterday in Reston. It was so great to see so many people out exercising their civic duty and voting. I wish more people would have shown up. I mean, still the numbers are just like, I don't know, 30% of registered voters. There needs to be many, many more people voting. And I will say that the most recent book I read was Where the Crawdads Sing. My wife had been talking it up and she had seen the movie twice. So I finally read the book and it's a great book. I'm not gonna, I'm guessing all of you have read it, so I don't need to give a summary.
That's neat. I haven't seen the movie, but I saw it advertised. So it's worthwhile watching.
I mean, according to my wife, the movie is, she saw it twice.
Okay.
So
I don't know.
haven't seen
I
it.
don't know. I wonder.
The book is excellent.
Okay. Thank you. Sujatha, what do you have?
Parker and I went to the unveiling of the statue at Tyson's Pimmet Library on the 22nd. The Chalbra family donated a statue in honor of Pamela Chalbra, who worked at Tyson's Pimmet apparently for a very long time. Really loved it. And so her absolutely adorable family and wonderful husband, who's, I mean, like, I'm like, what do I need to do? I want my husband to talk about like that way and donate statues for me. Anyway, so it was so touching. It was so sweet. The beautiful statue. It's called Girl Reading. He told the story. I mean, it's really quite a great story that he. It took so long to do it, and then COVID hit, and all of this stuff. It was delayed, and he just steadfastly apparently kept working. And every staff was saying how lovely he was to work with. Never a complaint, just got it done. And the whole family was there. Absolutely delightful. It was a really lovely event. There were several trustees there as well. Parker was there. Gary, you were there, right? Weren't you there, Gary? Wasn't? Yeah, Gary was there. You were there. John Faust was there. Members of staff, obviously. And it was just really a lovely event, I've got to say. And a very sweet statue of a girl just on her belly, legs up, reading a book. Really, really sweet. And I just love it. I love it. So anyway, go down there and check it out. If you're ever around Tyson's, it's very close to the mall. So you can just go in and check that out. Lovely Christine is working there now too. So you could go and say hi to Christine. And I think that's, and you know what I'm doing? I'm rereading if we're there yet, because I heard people are talking about the books. I've got several books going always at once, but when I was at the Friends event, the Friends sale, I got the Thornbirds from like 100 years ago.
Colleen
And, I mean, it's a big fat book like this, and I will tell you, like what, 16-year-old me or however old I'm, 15, 14, I love the Thornbirds. Reading it now, it's not really quite so great as I remembered, but I can understand why a 15-year-old me just thought it was completely delightful. And just, I'm very much enjoying this, 40 years ago. So that's fun. And that's
cool.
it.
Okay. Thank you, Sujatha. Bill, you got anything for us?
Several. I saw Yolanda Atkins at the Friends of the Poet Library on Sunday, and she was very excited about the naming, and she, said theoretically thanked me and thanked all the trustees. So I thought I would pass that on. On October 22nd, I was at the Charles Houston Community Center And books that I bought, kids' books that I bought at the library book sales, I took to this group that hands out to low-income kids. So Will Bailey and the Firefighter Friends distributed 600 coats to low-income kids, and each child got to pick up 2 books. Some of them were the books that I got at the library sale. One comment, I don't know if it was there, like I'm glad Sue mentioned it, because I'll probably try to go by there and get more kids' books this Sunday. But if there was any way, like if there's a library book sale, it just seems to be generally in that area. And is there any way we could distribute when we're having a book sale, they could go out in some, possibly put it on our library internal email that there'll be a book sale, this weekend at the Fairfax Library, some way where we could try to distribute that information more. That's that question. I didn't read this book, but this afternoon I took my car over to have the oil changed, and I was walking, and there's a beauty salon. In a beauty salon, this is the first, is having a book signing sale. And the only reason sort of I looked at it, the book is called Angela's Letter. And Angela's Letter, just briefly, I didn't read the book, but I read the little paragraph. Basically, Angela writes a letter to her first boyfriend. Both went off, married somebody else, and they're now in their 60s, and their spouses have passed away, and the book is about Angela's letter. And the only reason it caught my eye is within the last 6 or 8 months, a friend of mine told me my first true love when I was a kid, her husband died. And so she and we got together a couple times or something, and we're a little older than 60, but I sent her the book, and she wrote back and she told me she was gonna read the book or something.
Oh, cool.
But you could go to a book signing in a beauty salon in Burke if anybody has interest in doing that. So
Okay.
thank you for
Thanks,
letting me
Phil.
present that.
Thank you, Phil. Liz, what do you got now? Anything?
Well, between my vacation and working the early satellite voting site, I don't believe I had an opportunity to say that I've been impressed with the Chantilly and Centerville libraries participating with their friends groups at the Sully District Community Center that opened up, the open house that was had. I think that happened right before I left on vacation. And while I was out, Centerville had another book sale, and they also had a booth at the Centerville Day activities that was quite successful. So I love it when the friends and the libraries are doing their own outreach and getting out into the communities for these kinds of events. I think that the book sale was very successful. I do believe that Centerville is now deciding to have only 2 book sales a year because of the volume and the amount of work with the volunteers that we have. They will have a book sale that are new editions that are good for people to use for Christmas gifts or holiday gifts. And that will be the first part of December. And I think the friends have their own web pages, and I wonder, it just occurred to me when I guess it was Gary talking about advertising on the web pages, but I think that's another thing that we should explore, or I'll explore with them at Centerville, about whether they're using that web page to advertise for book sales that they have coming up. So anyway, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad I was able to join the meeting tonight. I've been a little bit busy with my vacation, which was fantastic. And then all the election stuff that are continuing to go on. I'll be working on that through Saturday and possibly Sunday, processing those provisional votes. So anyway, glad to be back, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Fran?
Thank you. I stopped in at TJ's indie author event on Saturday, and the place was just hopping. They had the little
Mhm.
tables in front of the entryway, and the authors were there with their books and just talking about their books. And it was so fun to have that immediate interaction of, why did you write this, and blah, blah, blah. And it was really fun. And it was just so, it was such a vibrant event. When you walked into the building, it was just so, it was so extroverted for a library. It was amazing. It was just great.
I echoed that at Centerville, that they were right up front, and
Yeah.
we were having early voting, the activity that
Yeah,
was
early
happening
voting at
there was
TJ
just-
also.
it
Yeah.
was fabulous, fabulous
Yeah.
energy.
Then the book that I'd like to recommend is one, those of you who've lived in this area for a long time, as I have, may remember in 1978, a sailboat that was abandoned in Chesapeake Bay, and the mystery of who was on the boat when they later found a decomposed corpse in the waters of the Chesapeake Bay. And examining it was a man who had a bullet wound behind his left ear and his belt, and he was wearing weight belts. And it turned out it was identified as a CIA agent, John Paisley. And the CIA, before the widow, well, they said that, he'd been in the water so long that there were no longer any fingerprints. The height of the corpse was different from the height of said John Paisley. And they said that it was suicide. And so then, if you can imagine someone on a sailboat wrapping a belt of weights around his waist, taking a gun as a right-handed person, and then jumping off the boat and then shooting himself before he landed in the water. It seems kind of bogus. The title of the book is The Spy Who Knew Too Much. It's a true crime book. It's a real page turner. And it took me back to reading the Post when that story came out. And I was like, there's something really, I don't like to say it, but there's something fishy about the story. And so the book is about an agent who was obsessed with, was there a mole in the CIA? Who was this person? Because the CIA had the body cremated before the wife even looked at it to identify it. It just made you wonder, who was it? It's really good, especially if you like spy versus spy and CIA stuff like that. So that's my little book teaser for tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Priscilla, you have anything for us?
I'd like to share that we have a new connection with FCPS and FCPL through our adult high school. So you may not be aware, but we have an adult high school program in Fairfax County Public Schools for students who have not graduated from high school and who are over 18. And for the first time this year, through a lot of advocacy work, we have a librarian assigned to the adult high school who's also taking care of a lot of other non-traditional school programs to provide library services. And in talking with John Rocco DeBonis, who is the librarian, new librarian there, experienced librarian, but new to that position, he just quickly learned of the unique needs of adults. About 75, maybe 80% are English learners, and who are working under, different circumstances to get a high school diploma. And I just thought there has to be a life benefit, not just an academic benefit, to connecting them with the public library. And so I'm just so grateful. Renee Edwards has met with us, and I know that they are, that Renee and Rocco are continuing to talk about all the possibilities And Ted had a conflict, but I know he was very excited too, to hear about what we can do. And I just think this is what it's all about, because I have a sense after hearing from Rocco that this is an underserved population that we're able to make connections with. So I'm very excited about that. And I will be sure to keep you informed as to what we do, because actually some of the ideas are really creative and fun. For allowing me to be a last minute addition to the Emily St. John Mandel presentation at the conclusion of Fall for the Book. It was amazing. And as someone who loves her books and has devoured all of them, it was wonderful, because she has little threads of connections in all of her books, to hear from her how she came up with those and help discover more. But the book I'm going to recommend is, I read it because of my favorite Libby feature, Skip the Line, and read Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, who also wrote All the Light We Cannot See, which is a book you may be familiar with. It was a stretch read for me, to tell you the truth, because it's a little complicated, but I'm sure library lovers would just devour it, because it talks about, the theme is a story and how a story can live through time, a single story from 15th century Constantinople through the future on an interstellar ship, the same story. It's fascinating, weaves a lot, and I loved it. And I finished it within my 14 days. I was proud of myself, because it was a stretch read for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Okay,
was the-
thanks, everyone.
What was the title
Yep.
again, Priscilla?
It's Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Oh, right. Okay.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks, everyone. As far as I'm concerned, or Braddock District, we had a book sale at Kings Park last weekend. It was very successful. I don't have a number or anything like that yet. Coming up in December in Burke Center, we'll have our usual holiday book sale. But that's it for this meeting. Does anyone have anything else before we adjourn?
I want Priscilla to read my little question there, and then you can email me the answer to that.
Okay,
question.
it's in the chat, Priscilla.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
chat.
so I
if
just
you-
don't
if
want
you-
you to not see. Okay, thank you so much. I
Okay,
appreciate
got it.
I
Okay.
left a note for Phil as well in the chat.
Oh, good.
Phil.
All
And
right.
Suzanne, what was the name of your book again? I wrote down, all I have is Nolan Valdez, and I
Take
missed-
my hand, right?
Take my hand, yes.
Thank
Take my
you.
hand.
Thank you,
That's-
Fran.
That sounds good. I wrote it
Mhm.
down. That sounds good.
She's a beautiful writer, and I
Mhm.
was just, she's an African-American writer, and I was just really impressed with this book. Hopefully you have it in the schools.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move, we
So
adjourn.
moved.
Okay, a second, please.
Second.
Okay, second from Keith. All right. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Okay.
Aye, okay. We meet
Everybody have
next
a good
month.
Thanksgiving.
Yes. happy
Okay,
Happy
thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye. We're adjourned then.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye-bye.